trying to get the old gang back together again.
We haven't done this in a long time.
Your fans never left you. The world hasn't forgotten.
Sure, it's impossible, but we've got to try. It's time to play the music.
It's time to light the lights.
It's time to meet the Muppets.
Hi, thanks for watching Your Geek News. I'm Matt, and that is Brian Hogg. He's the man behind Ask Palpatine. He does all of Hogwarts, and if you've seen Moss Puppet, well, that's him as well. So he's basically an authority when it comes to puppetry, and the best person I could think of to co-host a review on the Muppets. Brian, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you. Always with such crazy and unnecessary flattery, but thank you.
Well, it's the first time in, some would say years, but Puritans would say decades, that we've gotten a real Muppet movie. And so, Brian, what did you think? As a film, as just a straight-up film, we'll talk about it as a sequel of sorts later, but as a film, as the puppetry, what did you think? What did you think of it so far?
It was good. I feel on the spot now, like I have to really have an opinion about the puppetry. I mean, I do have an opinion about the puppetry. I'm just saying. Yeah, it was good. It was like it traded a lot of nostalgia, which I generally don't go in for, but it did it so charmingly that it was really hard to not go in for it. Like, I mean, even if it's a good movie, I don't generally care about the nostalgia, but they did it. It was really done really well. It was fun. You know, it's a musical. And it has to be catchy. And Brett McKenzie, unless I'm getting the name wrong, of Flight of the Conchords did the music in a lot of the songs, which was pretty good. Yeah, it was very interesting because it was story-wise, it was very much now, but at the same time sort of coexisting in the 80s and 70s, which you can imagine being a pretty difficult kind of balance to sort of strike, and Segel and everyone else did a very good job of that.
Absolutely. You know what? Jason Segel, the executive producer, the writer, the star, and really trusted by Disney to shepherd this thing all the way through. I thought it was pretty amazing. He managed to pull together some amazing human cameos and co-stars. Chris Cooper as the maniacal laugh, I thought was marvelous. Rashida Jones, Zach Galifianakis. I love the character Emily Blunt managed to pull just that perfectly pompous. It was beautiful. And then we had great little cameos like Selena Gomez popping in there. The cool kid from Modern Family was there as well with the ninja.
Is that who he was? I don't actually watch that show, so there were a couple cameos that I will admit went a little over my head. Much like I imagine the Mickey Rooney cameo in the beginning in Life is Like a Song. I imagine that went over a lot of people's heads as far as like the kids in the audience. Yeah,
as far as the children of our generation that grew up, sure they'd have no idea, but they'd get a real kick out of Jack Black, So I thought that they did a great job of managing to keep, one foot in the past, but really update the cameos. Because, I mean, Whoopi Goldberg has been on, she was on Muppets Tonight. She's been she's had stuff to do with Muppets in the past. And so it was great to see things like that brought back as well. But let's talk about Jason Segel and the fact that this man managed to really identify with us. Because he's one of us. He's just a giant fan of the Muppets. And if you've seen Forgetting Sarah Marshall, he's got a weird obsession with puppets that, thank God, Disney managed to put to some use. Because I'm impressed. It stands up to me with the the big three Muppet movies, the ones that matter, the Muppet movie, Muppets Take Manhattan, and the Great Muppet Caper. We're not talking about Muppet Christmas Carol and Muppet Treasure Island and Pigs in Space, but like the big three that matter to people who grew up on the Muppets.
I mean, I liked the original Muppet Christmas Carol, which was the first non-Jim Henson movie and was the big test of whether or not the franchise could actually survive his death. But yeah, I mean, certainly the majority of them in the Wizard of Oz and the various ones where they just were clearly making parody-ish kind of remakes of movies. Yeah, there's a spirit of the old ones that are just like these kind of weird, I'm going to say cantankerous, but that's not really it, but, the sort of wisecracking kind of really sort of vaguely hippie-ish characters. It's like the wisecracking hippies is kind of what the Muppets are in many ways. Yeah. And so, so they kind of, they went away from that. But yeah, Segel did a really good job of bringing it back to, back to basics. It probably could have been a little more violent because the very early stuff was very violent and had a lot more mature content than most people our age would realize if they haven't actually seen it since they were a kid.
Yeah, it's funny how I rewatched the big three before the new Muppet movie came out, and I wanted to really not just remember it as a kid. I wanted to get an idea of production value, and when weird things like Miss Piggy being a child in skates, I didn't pick up on that at the time. I remember thinking it's weird. I could see Miss Piggy's legs, but it was something that the production value back then. I mean, a lot of it totally blew me away watching it again now. And
oh yeah, like the original, like the Muppet movie, like absolutely holds up. And I mean, even just not to talk about that one more than the current one, but like just the first sequence, which you go from this kind of wobbly, helicopter shot in the swamp to Kermit sitting on a log, and you don't think about the fact that to make that, they had to build a pond with a little bit there. Jim Henson is underneath there, sort of in like a little hole, with his hands sticking straight up, and they have to build the whole thing in order so that, that Kermit can appear to just be sitting there naturally. I don't think they did anything quite that large in the Siegel one, but there's certainly moments where they, that most people wouldn't even think about in terms of the complexity of the, the setup, but that they were quite, complex and everything.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that sequence in Muppets Take Manhattan, I think, when Jim Henson had the rats do the entire cooking sequence and fall into the coffee and do all these just mind-boggling things that you could do with just wires and magnets and it. You look at what Jason Segel was able to have put together now, and there's, I'm impressed with the film, but the limitations that those first three movies were made with, so many of them are gone now. Yeah. And so that there's no excuse for bad puppetry now.
No,
it's easy.
Yeah, I mean, because they went like classic. They didn't go, with like there wasn't really any CG that I think I noticed. I mean, I'm sure there was like set extension CG in various things, but as far as the puppet, there wasn't really much. Like there were only a couple shots. There were a couple shots where there's one in particular where Scooter is, I think, putting on his, I feel like he wears a tux at one point, and he puts that on, and it's a full body shot, and they obviously, they built a special, probably a Bunraku puppet, which is the one where, a bunch of people operate the different limbs and stuff, and it may not actually have been that, but they did it nice enough, it didn't really matter. In the first Muppet movie, they actually had a shot like that, because they have a wide shot in the comedy club, or the bar, rather, where Fozzie is in the comedy club, and there's a full shot of him, and he moves his feet and stuff. And if you look at that one, you can tell, you can see that it's composited not as nicely as it would be done today. But yeah, so they still kind of had that amount of stuff. So they still, maybe that was, I guess, the best part of it is it didn't try to do some sort of radically different thing. It was just doing good versions of the stuff that really worked well before.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of the reason that Jason Segel managed to make this one work, because he had that reverence, and not just because he was told to have it. He had that reverence because he grew up when we grew up. He watched the movies we watched. He watched The Muppet Show. He loves puppetry because of Jim Henson. And I think nothing is scarier as a creator to die, in Jim Henson's case, and then to have your legacy sold to a gigantic corporation, and then have nobody who had anything to do with the original completely make a film. And I am amazed that this managed to go through as many cogs as it did and wind up as true to the original with none of the original cast or crew. And that, to me, is a testament to Jason Segel, because the guy just really nailed it.
And yeah, Segel had a really good sense of the style of humor with Let's Travel by Map and those, those kind of gags. Yeah. Because in the first one, there's a sequence where Dr. Teeth finds Kermit and the gang lost in the desert, and Kermit says, "Well, how'd you find us?" And he said, "Well, I read the script." Yeah. So I think there were a couple script jokes in the movie. I'm blanking on exactly where they were, but so yeah, it felt like a good sequel. It's sort of like, not to get all hoity-toity, but in Superman Returns, which is kind of this 20-year later sequel to the last one that people didn't really care about, whereas this worked better as, I like Superman Returns, actually. I think I'm one of 5 people, but it worked well as a sequel from a 20-year-old movie that you didn't really need to have seen the first movie for. I had plot issues, though. There were a couple of issues I had with the plot.
Oh?
Yeah, well, okay. Actually, I have a question for you, because in the version you saw, during the Tex Richmond song,
Yeah.
was there a bit of opera?
Was there opera?
Yeah, there's like in the middle, like in the center of the rap song, was there like a slower piece where he's singing operatically?
I don't remember.
See, I don't think there was in my version either, but I have the soundtrack. I got the soundtrack because, you know, whatever. 'Cause I like the Muppets. And there's a bit in the middle where he sings, where Tex Richmond in a very like, I was so, you know, kind of way, sings, he explains his character, because there's the joke where he just says, maniacal laugh, which I just thought was kind of funny. The thing was that, and the reason he hates the Muppets is that I think his 10th birthday party, his parents brought the Muppets in, and all of the other kids were laughing at the Muppets' hilarious antics, and he didn't know how to laugh. So they laughed at him, and that's why he hates the Muppets and wanted to destroy them in the context of the movie.
Really? Okay.
And it was right in the middle of the rap. And they just cut, I think they just cut that out.
Yeah.
Maybe it's depending on the version. And I you know, you listen to that and you're like, well, that makes so much, like, that makes his, like, the Richmond's character, which otherwise is just kind of, you know, undefinably bad guy kind of thing.
The character suddenly has
make a lot of
motivation.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, yeah, I just don't know why they would have cut that.
Huh.
But
Well, at least we know what some of the deleted scenes on the DVD are going to be.
I presume so. Yeah, I hope so. Like, I hope there's a version with the whole thing.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But, I mean, he did a great job of actually performing the rap. I thought he did a really good job of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, fingers crossed for a really good Muppets DVD when that comes out.
That would be nice. I also watching it, and I don't know how much longer you were hoping to planning to take on this, but but you know, you call me, I'm gonna talk.
All right.
I was immediately when Kermit's like, oh well, the only way we can earn $10 million is to put on a show, which of course is the only answer in the context of a movie like this. I did kind of wonder two things: why they didn't sort of work in, like, in the real world, they had already been doing those, like, really popular YouTube videos, which would have been earning a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, if they're, you know, for ad revenue. It's like, why didn't they do that, or why didn't any of the characters, like, the characters were in this kind of stasis in some ways, right? Like, they hadn't really embraced any of that.
Yeah.
So I was kind of wondering why they didn't, even a part of, like, the montage, say, well, we tried this, we didn't, or whatever. Or in, like, with the show being, like, the end result. Or alternatively, if Kermit wanted it so bad, his house is probably worth, you know, in LA, I'm assuming a mansion the size that he has is going to be worth certainly at least $10 million.
Yeah, you got a good point there. Kermit could have just, you know, shuffled off his mansion.
Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be the point of the movie, but that did make me, I wondered about that. I also actually would have liked to have known why the gang broke up. Because in his very, you know, his very sweet song, Was There More I Could Have Said, it's like, did Kermit do something? Did he push people away? Was it simply that they just stopped talking to each other? Like, there was a reference kind of to that with when he talked to Fozzie, and it's like, you don't talk to me anymore, I'm sorry I don't talk to you, or whatever. But it was never, like, it felt like there should have been some horrible thing that happened, but they never really hit it, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
Like, but, because I think about these things. But, I mean, that didn't make me not enjoy it at the time. I still quite enjoyed it. It's just, I kind of would have liked to have had a little more explanation. I like the, I can't remember the name of the puppet, but the sort of, the evil-looking one who turns out to be a good guy, the sort of henchman.
He was
Richmond,
great.
just because I talk with a menacing British accent doesn't mean I'm evil. So it was pretty good. Yeah. The one bit that I didn't expect and was cute, but I didn't really feel like was totally necessary, was the Mana at the end. Like, when they're doing it, it's like, that's fun, and I get it. But it was just kind of a weird, like, the moment, and I know the whole point of the Muppets is not really to be taking these things too seriously, but he actually proposes to her, and she, from his perspective, she turns like 45 degrees and says "mana," and presumably something else. I don't know what. So there's the next shot of the Jason Segel character, like, is that a yes or a no? I don't really understand. But you know, that's me being too literal. But Walter was a nice addition.
I liked Walter a lot. I thought. You know, I thought the whole introduction sequence with Walter was just beautiful, and, you know, the fact that no one noticed he was a Muppet, I thought was just delightful. Until the end.
Yeah, ignoring the obvious paternity issues.
Yeah. Now, one thing about Walter, Walter could whistle. How do they do that?
Yeah.
Is that just an animatronic thing?
You know, I actually watching that, I thought that's really great. And you know, actually, a real person did that whistling. Andrew Bird, the musician. He's a really good whistler, and he did the crap. I can't remember this song, but fantastic whistler. But yeah, I can imagine a few different ways you do that. You could do some animatronic, but considering he was basically just a hand puppet, I'm guessing. I mean, you could put like a band or something inside, so the puppeteer would just kind of like put purse something like a piece of plastic or something, so if you kind of just squeezed your hand together, it could like bow up or something. But yeah, I'm not actually sure how that was done, but it was a nice effect. Like that like all the puppetry, I was just thinking, hey, that's really cool, and like probably very few people noticed it. Yeah, yeah. Well, it was one of those moments where, as I was watching it, I was thinking, I've got to ask Brian about this. Yeah. No, it was nice. I really liked the look of it, because I don't know that I've seen. I mean, maybe Kermit has done it at some point, but generally it's just kind of you have it open a little bit, and your whole mouth is kind of curved. But the fact that it was so tight and just like right at the center was where that was awesome. Whistled in a way that I guess people really don't do, because you can't really tuck your like a puppet. You can't really tuck the whole lips in or whatever. But, yeah, lip pursing. Yeah, it was nice. Doesn't seem like it's an option, but it worked. It worked really well. It impressed me to the point of taking me out of the movie. Yeah, which maybe that's a bad thing, actually. Maybe, but it's just because taking you out of the movie. It's also because we should have cut that. It's also because I've shot puppets with you before, so it makes me think: how would I have gotten Brian to do that to the Zach Galifianakis puppet or to the Sarah Palin puppet? None of those would have done it. The mouth would have had to have been constructed specifically with that in mind. Exactly. And they probably had like a dozen waltzers, because he gets like stuff thrown on him, he gets burned, They would have had an entire puppet just for that one shot, probably, where he eats the chili dog and he has all the stuff on his face. Yeah. That probably is an entire puppet just for that. Well, thanks again, Brian, and sure. I will definitely be in touch when it comes to further puppeteering. Excellent. Cool, thanks again, and thanks for watching Your Geek News. We've got some more exciting stuff on the way. And don't worry, we won't be reviewing Mission Impossible, because it sucked. And we also won't be reviewing Sherlock Holmes, because it put Nat to sleep. So we'll be hopefully talking about Dragon Tattoo and some other exciting stuff that's coming up in 2012. And thanks again, Brian, for being a part of Your Geek News today.
I believe in you, and you, and you, and, well, all of you. Aww. And now, singing chickens.
Make the most sensitive, distinguished.
Prepare yourselves for head bowling. What? I have not signed off on this.
Celebrity-filled. And sophisticated Muppet movie ever made. Ever.
Have a seat.
Thank you.
I think I'll stand.
Comfy.